Damian Irvine joins the ET Stand podcast next.
For over 50 years, people have come to see the Sharks play. Talent, skill, speed, intelligence, elite-level athleticism. That's not these guys. Biased, one-eyed, opinionated, more often wrong than right. They make up for their complete lack of talent with pure dribble, gibberish, and enthusiasm. This is the ET Stand podcast.
Welcome to the ET Stand, the Cronulla Sharks fan podcast that lets its talking do the football. We're live on YouTube and available on delay on all good audio platforms, including Spotify, Apple Pods, Amazon, and a whole bunch of others. And on this episode, I'm joined by regular co-host Matthew Williams, a nostalgia nerd. But more notably, we're joined by former Sharks Chairman and one of the CSSC founders, Damian Irvine, hopefully ready to reminisce and talk some early 2000 Sharks nostalgia with us and relive some of the highs and lows, certainly, of those times. He is the man who has attended every Sharks match home and away live with me in 2008. Don't know if that was a good year for him or not, having to sit next to me at a bunch of matches. And he was, of course, the chairman of the Sharks from 2009 through to 2013 in what can only be described as mission impossible. And we are very thankful for the work that he did for the club in that time. Post-Sharks, he made the switch to the UK, where he's the current CEO of Ebbsfleet United Football Club that is based in Northfleet, Kent, England. The club competing in the National League, the fifth level of the English Football League. And prior to that, have spent time with Wycombe Wanderers and Notts County Football Club. Let's bring him in. D-Man, Damo,
How you
welcome
doing?
to the show. I'll cue the music down. Mate, how are you?
Really good, thank you. Fine Tuesday morning here in the UK, so it's good to talk to you.
Starting to get cold?
Very. Yeah, last weekend away in Tamworth in the Midlands was the first time for this season. I said, well, yeah, that's a cold fog. So, yeah, but we're getting there.
You watching much Sharkies these days? What did you make of the later season, mate?
Oh, look, obviously disappointing in the end. I look, when the club is regularly back in the mix in the top four at the end of the season and in the big dances, you know, it's always a good era for the club. Always. I think, you know, the time we talked about was a time when we were always in that mix, and then there's been some low times since, and there were low times before. So for the club to be up there and giving those memories for young groups of supporters and families and all that, the disappointment's part of it, mate. You know, every year we walked away from plenty of stadia in tears or very sad that we missed out a game short or 2 games short. But they're also good seasons, mate. They're really good seasons. So all in all, it was great to see the club in the mix again and consistently in the mix with the work that's being done at the moment. And it'll come, mate. You know, I think it was good. There's rugby side of it, football side of it, which I think is going to be improved on this coming season, certainly in some roster things. And I think the spine needs a little bit of work and some things like that. But nevertheless, you know, I think there were boys playing out of positions, some boys with injury issues and still it was a massive year. So you've got to look at that with rose-coloured glasses, I think, anyway. Yeah.
Oh, the injuries are massive, aren't they? You just can't get through the final series. Like we talk about Matt Rogers in 1999 coming off against the Dragons. Like the 2008 team, boy, we were so good in that year, and that was the year
It was more Jamie Ainscough than Matt Rogers, wasn't that? I don't
Correct.
know that.
In 99, yes.
Yeah, I think it wasn't so much Matt getting injured; it was Jamie Ainscough plastering his nose across his face. Yeah, which was.
That was actually there was the 2000 match at home where he plastered his nose across his face, and then he, I believe, Ainscough was responsible for a cork, and Matty Rogers midway through, or actually it was first half, tried to come back on in the second half, couldn't get it moving, but still, I'd stop mentioning 99 Boldo. That's just.
Well, so Damo, we have
years.
Matty Williams is the nostalgia nerd. So what happens is we bring up a match, we bring up a moment, and Williams always remembers it. So I'm going to talk about one specifically. There was a match where we're at ANZ Stadium out at Homebush, and the Sharks got a try in the last 30 seconds or 20 seconds to win. And you and I went absolutely.
It was Goodwin boy from a grubber kick.
Oh, there you go. He knows. He
Hang on.
knows.
Who
He
kicked the
knows.
grubber?
Greg Bird, I'd say, from
Hang on.
Greg Bird.
And he
Bird
did
kicked
this
the grubber.
exact same play about 3 minutes before, and it just evaded his hands and from the scrum, and then they tried again. So we haven't covered that game yet, but we can cover that game in future if you want to dial in. So
Mate,
I just remember
the hands to finish were quite incredible. I think you know they talk this day and age in modern day of wingers finishing, and it's excruciatingly impossible how most of them finish these days. But at the time, that was exceptional. I think he dragged it back in from going wide and sort of found it.
Yeah.
I remember it vividly because I think we all just looked around and sort of said, well, we never win games like this.
that is what you said to me. That's amazing.
Boldo quoted that.
We
There
never
you
win
go.
like that, Boldo.
Yeah.
We never win. That's
That was
amazing.
16 years ago, 2008. Yeah.
It seemed at
Yeah.
the time because it was always happening against us. You know, there'd be a last minute something or that. So, yeah, that was an exciting day. Wow.
Yeah, I'd say that is a distinct memory that I have of you, that you remember as well. It was a special match, and Bryson Goodwin getting in. Damo, before we get into the full episode and give the rundown, your favourite all-time Shark? I think I know who it is, but I think you might give me two answers here.
You might be surprised, you might not be. Look, I've got a lot of them, obviously, but for a lot of reasons, mate. Steve Rogers is for me. He's our rugby league club, you know, and he was for me in my era. He was for so many reasons, mate, and he was sorely missed when he died, and the club was affected greatly by it. But before that, Steve, mate, you know, where I grew up as a really young kid in Yarrawarra, you know, Steve lived local with Carol and Maddie and Don. I went to primary preschool with Don, you know, didn't know at the time. I just, you know, we look back at pictures and go, hey, we were in the same class and that. And so that era of pioneering in the Sutherland Shire and that Heathcote, Engadine area was where so many of our sort of parents and friends came from and people that were involved in the club. A lot of players who were pioneering to come away from St. George were based there and building. And Steve just epitomised that in so many ways. And, mate, my first memory of picture I got when I was sort of 3 or 4 years old, every Sunday, you know, I'd be dressed at 7 a.m. in my full kit, you know, wanting to be Steve Rogers and that. And so for me, that's the club and the reason, I guess, for me. He was a superstar, an absolute superstar, and hugely underrated, I think, in history as a centre three-quarter, a traditional centre three-quarter. I used to love the video comparisons of Matt, and then even Jack, Matt's son, when Jack was playing a bit of rugby in rugby league in full flight. DNA doesn't far fall from a tree, mate. You know, particularly in running gates and that, you really notice it in the sons, I think. Tawira Nickow's boy was over here in the UK a little bit, and mate, there's some pictures where he's sort of just
it's the same person
running the short side upright, ball in one hand, and just ready to offload, and he's almost got the tongue out and grin like Tawira had, and so I love that DNA, mate, and I always see Matt now and Jack that DNA of Steve Rogers. So for me, he's the great, but don't ask me to compare him to E.T. or to Dave Peachy or Dean Treaster or David Hatch or Gavin Miller. How do you split them? I thought a favourite of yours was always the Peach, Damo, because I remember how heartbreaking it was for you and me when the Peach came back to Shark Park and he carved us. Yeah. Oh, look, incredible. Do you know, it's funny though, as putting squads together, I've still got, I'm a director of a rugby league club in Leeds, still Hunslet, and you put in squads together. He's not a player you put really in your squad or rely on or go at the start of a season. Now in the modern era, go, here's our starting one. He would have been a utility all day long. And that era sort of changed towards the back end of his career. It probably harmed him a little bit because rugby league was going into this, like all sports, but going into an American style percentage play format. I mean, that's what the game is now that you guys watch every week, as opposed to what we were watching 20 years ago, mate.
Yeah.
You know, is Dave Peachy chipping on the 20-metre line coming out of trouble really going to get him picked for Australia in this modern era? And which is a damn shame, by the way. And it's why players like Blacklock and Preston Campbell and I think Ponga suffers from it as well in the modern era. I've just been a little bit, too ostentatious. I don't know, be a little bit too flamboyant. And I think the game's worse for it, if I'm honest. I love to see it.
Well, they were certainly great days. All right. Well, we've got one of our old favourites, Trish Meady's come along in the comments and said, "Hi, Damo." So good day to you, Trish. Oh, sorry. She's saying hello to you, Damo.
What
Not saying hello to them.
Trish and those guys, mate, that group, weren't they? Always with us.
Oh, weren't they?
And whenever something needed to be done in tough times, mate.
Oh, they were incredible. We're going to talk to that group. So on this episode, we'll talk to the legacy of Damian Irvine and all the different things that he did and set up and on at the Sharks. We'll talk about the notable moments. The Leagues Club development obviously is still in the news and a contentious point for a bunch of Sharks fans. We obviously have to talk about our old friend Ricky Stewart, the foundations for the premiership, working with the media. And then at the end, D-Man, we're going to take you through some I've got a top 5 list of the all-time great early days CSSC chants, which knowing you, I know that you will probably disagree with me because you just will. And then I've got a photo album set. I've got a lot of photos of you, mate. God, I went through and looked at how many photos I've got of you and me at Sharks matches with a bunch of characters.
A few people said I'm coming on. I've got 1 or 2 sent in from you, by the way, of you, so we could share those.
Oh, do you? How good.
Yeah.
Nice.
Oh, how good. Well, yep. All right. Well, we can certainly share those ones. I took a few incriminating ones of you out, mate. So any of you and me out there, I thought we weren't looking any good. I thought we would certainly take out. So, all right, well, let's get into it.
Okay, I'll put this one away then.
yeah. Oh, you could put them up. No, that's all. That's all good and fine. Yeah, goodness me. God, there's so many. But we'll get to that at the end of the show. So, mate, obviously the big moment for you and what you're known for a lot of things around the Sharks and obviously being a legend fan and a sponsor, but becoming the chairman in 2009, how did that all come about? Because I remember that there weren't that actual many nominations for the board and at the time. And there was 3 extra of you that had put yourselves names forward just to kind of sound it out almost, I thought at the time. And then, well, the SHIT hit the fan. And so talk to us about that situation and how that all came about.
No, it wasn't a sounded out, Boldo.
What was it?
The club was dying, mate, in front of our eyes. I mean, it was during a season. It wasn't in a closed season. It was around May time, I think.
It was May.
Of negative press happened, and it was a perfect storm of continual toe stumps. It had started the year before with the Greg Bird issue and how that was managed by the then CEO, Tony, and the coach in Ricky and that. We were in a final series, I believe. We're headed into a final series when he was suspended, and there was I was a sponsor of the club at the time, and as we knew, we were all involved with the CSSC, and we were
we all wanted him to play.
Difficult spot.
Difficult, wasn't it?
The overall foundation of the CSSC, the whole reason was we are all in to support the football club. That's what we're here to do. We're not politicians. We're not negative. Hey, people want to boo them off. That's not us, mate. We're going to, because we're invested. We're going every day. We're organising buses. We're going to sit together. So you want to be in, we're in. And that was our approach. So it was a difficult time because the club, there was a lot going on that needed fixing or needed sort of addressing. So that final series came, and I remember there was a lot of stuff going on. The club had just received its planning application for retirement homes on the site and a small retail strip mall sort of thing. A lot of work had been done on that, a lot of hard work, and it was a 20-year project that Barry had been overseeing. I think there was another director there, Cowley and Jim Barnett and guys, and they worked, and they'd seen the club through Super League, through a whole bunch of stuff. But the football club was still year on year losing $2 to $3 million dollars, and it just was. We didn't have a massive capacity. Our fan base wasn't huge compared to some of the one-team towns and all that. Some wonderful rugby league players and coaching staff had made it a really top competitive club, and we were always the underdog coming out of St George as little brother, and we were just in there fighting. And that's what the club had been for 20 years up until this 2009 period. But as a result, we were always sitting ducks a little bit for for anything that went wrong because we didn't have the resources at a club. We always had an overdraft with a bank and we're relying on their goodwill to give, a little bit more, $250,000 this year. That was the cash flow of the club. So when we had, the birthing, Rennie Matua getting done with drugs, Brett Seymour getting in trouble, I don't know, walking drunk down the mall. I don't know. There was a young hooker.
He injured himself down in Wollongong too, didn't he?
I don't know.
That was the year before, Keimer. But anyway, 09 was a litany. Boldo, you and I have spoken about how much stuff went on that year.
It was 08 and
09. It was like every single thing you could think of going into that. And then before...
There's
and
ones
then
you wouldn't remember. There's Talita Latu getting in a fight at the service station. And there's so many of them.
We could dedicate an entire episode just to about a 2-month period of 2009, I reckon, between Rennie Matua, Brett Seymour. There was I had a whole litany of them in there. There was the Four Corners report came out. The Four Corners report came out.
That's the knockout punch, right? That was the knockout punch. And we weren't... I've always said these off-field atrocities that rugby league comes to occasionally. And at the time, and it's still been prevalent, they go in cycles and the levity that they're treated from the governing body and that change depending on whether they're just sick and tired of it, so they make precedents and come down hard, or then, some other time in the closed season or whatever, they just get overlooked. And this happened at a time when off-field atrocities were the number one bad boy in town for the NRL. They were stamping down on it all. It always coincides with the broadcast deal coming up. Funnily enough, they get, come on, we've all got to be good. And they were just so hard on everything, and they were hard on the club and everything. So, of course, then the Four Corners report on a matter which was raised and dealt with some 7 years prior just came at a time. And it happens because when a club's on its knees, people dig it up and go, hey, by the way, this happened these years ago. Let's sink the boot in. And it happened then, and it happened again a few years later. So that really was tragic for the club. We're in the middle of a season, mate. They camped out in the car park. You guys saw it. It wasn't a sport or an NRL problem. It was a front page problem. We had a board that was tired in there. At the same time, the Clint Elford debacle was being handled poorly. This guy who, pretended he had a very nasty illness, quite disingenuously, and he'd written to Tony Zappia and Ricky Stewart and said, I want to help the club when I go, and I've got this insurance. Tony and Ricky called in to see him on the way to the Canberra game in Goulburn and they set up this foundation, this Beyond Sharks Foundation, where the money would go and they were going to use it to pay players and all sorts of stuff. This all came out at the same time. So while all the newspapers are on us, Barry, the poor guy, has got his shirt to give this guy who's going to save the club financially down at Ridges Cronulla. He's there to meet him, and the feds turn up and arrest the guy and go, he's a fraud. And the board's just hanging out there going, what can we do? There was elections due for the board, 6 weeks later or something, 4 weeks later. I'd already been speaking with Barry. He wanted new blood on the board. He wanted people, to get back where I started. We were talking about the property development. We'd been at meetings, myself, Kev Ryan, and people that were involved locally, sponsors, about looking at their plans. And we gave feedback in late 2008 because this thing they'd worked on for so long, this retirement village plan, and Kev's got Waterbrook Retirement. He knows the business. They did this big presentation saying, we've saved the club, this is our property deal. But under scrutiny, we were really concerned about that because it was conceived prior to the GFC in 2008, and they were still running with the same financial modelling late in that year. And we had some concerns with that. This was the whole club's future. The hotel that was there had a valuation on completion of 14 million, but it was going to cost 18 million to build at that time. And there were little things like that. We said, well, look, this just take a breath on this. But they were quite desperate.
The retirement village just always didn't feel right, I thought. And I think I thought it was a plain eyes test. I think you just picked it, Damo. I think
it's not their fault, mate. It's not their fault.
It was the zoning.
Their planning had been chipped and papered and modelled and moulded through so many council applications over time to please the loud voices in council, both sides of politics, that it became an unfeasible plan. The council were happy with it, but that didn't stack up anymore. So nevertheless, this was all coming to light because we'd had those discussions. Barry had said, look, would you consider standing? I said I'd have a look and see if I could help. Then this all unravelled. It became a political thing. Ricky Serace was a sponsor of the club, B2B, and Paul Walker wanted to stand independently, a local school teacher who knew rugby league in the area very well. Now, we did that, but we didn't do that in isolation, mate, and this is where I think history needs to remember. I went and worked to try and put a viable board together to stand against that current board of new blood, and we had so many meetings. And I won't say the names of the, because a couple aren't with us anymore, sadly, but we had meetings, and Madeline was involved, and I think your brother was involved.
Yeah, Andrew was thinking about jumping on. He jumped on later.
Spoke with Dave Dino even at the time, who was with the core, I think, and this is getting involved, and we must have had a dozen meetings. The bottom line is, when the nominations came around and all that, no one wanted to stand for election. None of these group that wanted to meet and wanted to help, this should be done and that should be done, and they're all idiots and the club's in trouble and that board stinks and they should be overthrown. When we sat down and I said, all right, well, let's go. I need a ticket. They didn't. And the reason they didn't was the place was insolvent. Mostly, I think. It's very hard. It was losing money hand over fist. The bank had said, we're not giving you any more money. The current board were needing PR advice and trying to get consultants they just couldn't afford during this whole perfect storm. So at the end of the day, there's the three of us independently stood there. And
the three of you got on?
And we did. And then within
a couple of weeks,
4 or 5 weeks, the current directors sort of just put their hand up and said, no, it's too hard. I've been here a long time. I'm tired, and handed the keys over, basically. And that's when the real picture.
You had to go find new board members then, didn't you, Damo? Because a bunch. What happened there? Well, it was a couple of things. Straight away, once we were elected, a few of those who failed to put their hand up and get in the arena before the election, then they saw the previous guys and thought, oh, we'll have a piece of this now. Here I am, put me on the board. And we were like, there's a process. You could have been elected 6 weeks ago. Now that you didn't want to borrow that, because I know you didn't want to go into battle. You didn't want to put yourself in an election against the current board. We've done that work for you. We're in, and there's been change. And now you want to come in. And Madeline said, I want to be chair. I'm not coming to help. I said, well, don't work like that. It don't work that way. You could have put your name up for chair. And putting stuff in the papers and all that, which is the last thing the club needed, and it created further instability. So that, you know what, that peed me off, because at some stage when the writing's on the wall, people have got to stand up and roll the sleeves up, and I'll be forever grateful and respectful to Paul Walker and Ricky Serace for doing that, putting their name to it when no one wanted no one wanted a piece of that football club. Then when there's a bit of a change in that, few people want to put their hand up, and we talked a lot about it. I was quite keen to put Madeline on the board. I think she brings a lot. She's a great family in the Shire and a great businesswoman. She was very politically connected at the time with the Liberal Party, who were in power at the time, and we could have used that, by the way. I think the problem was there's this Ways and Means Committee of the Cronulla Sharks, which is this secret sort of committee that bob up every now and then, generally driven by a former chair himself, who's a great guy, but again wants to sort of contribute from the sidelines all the time and have opinions and get stuff together, and that's valuable and you respect that, but it doesn't help Monday morning at 9 a.m. having someone sort of sit and just go, you should have done that, you should do this, put this guy on. It doesn't help. You got to, I said 1,000 times to him, Pete, if you want to get involved, mate, jump on. Honestly, jump on and be a director. And 4 or 5 others as well. Great men of the club, but they weren't having this. You can't just place her on. You can't do that. It's all got to be elections. So anyway, we went away, and there is provision to do short-term appointments under the Constitution, and the club needed non-Cronulla, non-bruised people. It needed measurement externally on where we were from a moral point of view, a governance point of view, structure point of view, and most certainly a financial point of view. That's what we needed. And I met with hundreds of people
I spoke with the Women on Boards organisation. I met Denise Aldous and Jenny Reynolds. Denise came from the World Bank. She was the Pacific Islands rep on the World Bank, a governance expert, loved her rugby union, didn't know much about rugby league. I didn't care, it didn't matter. And Jenny Reynolds was the head of trade at ANZ Bank in New South Wales at the time. And they took a shed load of convincing to get involved with this cluster that was this club that all they saw about was front page,
But you weren't the chairman at this time. You were chairman, you were 3 directorships at the same time, you were the G, you were doing a lot of stuff. In terms of what you signed up for, the toll on you, and I think maybe that's the story that doesn't get associated. I saw the change from you in 2008 to goodness me, you were working hard.
I think the thing is you be careful what you wish for. I think it's the lesson there, mate. I think, and I wouldn't change it for the world. I think the realization of the gravitas of a wrong step or a failure to improve things was the death of the club. It really was. So we were in a lot of trouble, and I think the adrenaline there really took over, and the realization that we got to get it done. If I don't get it done, it's not going to be done.
And it's done.
And I think because we asked a lot of people for a lot of help and said get involved, and everyone shied away from it. So you just have to get it done, mate. So that's where we were. 8 weeks, and we went through spreadsheets, financial stuff with them, rewrote it all, and they did a great job for the club. And we started the rebuild there and then. And most of that was based on a relationship with St George Bank and letting them know that we, back us. And Craig Douglas came on, which was instrumental in the club's future and success. He had great history with the club and he knew about the club, and we put a plan together, a very disciplined financial plan, which the bank had to believe in. They checked every day. They said, do not overspend on that playing budget. If you do, we'll withdraw funding. This is what got the club in trouble for 10 years. Don't do it again. And that's just an example. There are 1,000 other things we had to do every week. But our method was, you shut us down or you let us trade you out. There's no in between. It's either we're trading you out or you shut it. If we're going to trade you out, you need to keep supporting us every day.
What was the kicker that got Jenny and Denise over the line, I suppose, given that took a lot of convincing? Do you know? Did you put a finger on it?
Probably a question for them. It's probably I think they've told me why. Okay. But I think that's probably one for them, I think, because it's a personal thing. I think they believed about the intent and that the club had changed.
Yeah, would be just summary. Yeah, 2 things also, just before I let you go back onto the questioning, Boldo. One thing I should have highlighted from the start, great interview from yourself with Sam Shinazi on our friends at Sharkcast back in 2021. I've listened to that a few times, including recently. And one thing I did see was obviously doing all this pro bono. Boldo's seen, we all saw the instant change overnight, the gravity there. You talk in that about how much, I suppose, you go from being a fan to instantly being the key component that's keeping the club together and knowing all that stuff. And you can't talk to anyone about it, it was so difficult. So obviously thank you to all of us for that and the team that did that. In amongst that, on the field, there was no winning wallpaper at all. 09 was as bad as it could. We won round 1 against Penrith. Brett Carney broke his ankle, and we didn't win again until I think it was May or late May against Parramatta. So that didn't help at all. I don't think even if we were winning off the heels of the prelim final in 08, I don't think that would have helped much. But gosh, everyone's looking on the field. No one's getting any release whatsoever, other than I think we had 3 wins in a row in the middle of the year to give us a slight bit of hope, including a famous win down in Canberra, and then it all went to poo again. So thank you for all of that. Because we saw the change. Yeah.
I think the reality of the faces and friends who have meant so much to every day prior to all this blowing up, that you can't underestimate the fuel, the reason why you every morning. I think the thought of coming to any of you over a beer at the bowling club or whatever and saying, mate, find something else to do next week because this is it. Was an impossible thought, and I think that the driver of that meant a lot. That means a lot. It gives a why, mate, and it needed to be there. You can't just have a bunch of Jenny Reynolds and Denise Aldises and people that don't have that drive because you wouldn't do it. You wouldn't do it. And I think if I'm honest, those people that failed to put their hand up when they were asked, they probably weren't as desperate for it to succeed as I was or Craig was when he came on, and Ricky and Paul. That's the key, because you needed it, because there were no common sense in doing it. There wasn't there was certainly no family reasons for putting myself in that position. There was certainly
no family or financial, just risk and time.
That's right. And everyone, onwards from there, Curry and Keith Ward and others have certainly done that. Now, I've got to say, though, that exists also for Barry Pearce and Jim Barnett and everyone before as well, Paul Tabrudi, whoever it was that board before for 10, 15 years. They had to exist then, because you wouldn't go in and they're not enjoying losing that money every year. They're trying every bit to fix it. So that's, I guess, the special thing about our club. And I think it's a special thing. I've used it over here in UK football. It's a special thing about membership-owned clubs that generally have elected boards and people that, the old saying, don't volunteer for anything, is pretty true, because the sacrifices in volunteering your time for anything you love are very underestimated daily.
Damo, look, the second we put out the thumbnail and said we were having you on the show, I got a couple of people asking me immediately, asked Damo about the league's club development and how that all came about and where that's up to now. And I just don't think people realize the difficult situation and the deal that you inherited and how you just had to get something happening to save us. Talk to us about the development and what you inherited and where you took it to.
So it's two really different stories. I think how the development was conceived. It was conceived to have the people that conceived it and sat and looked the people in the eye we did the deals with to be policing that and monitoring that for the club for the next decade or around. For property and business is such. And I think you asked a question about Denise and Jenny. What we did have is we had integrity of decision making at the time, in that people weren't going to screw us over because they knew we'd fight for that club tooth and nail. And if they tried to do one on us, mate, I would have gone for the jugular big time, publicly and everything. We were telling them, you've got to do this for the right reasons, and this is how it's going to be, and you're going to have to do it this way or don't do it. But that's how it was. So we had, obviously, the development was in place. That property approval, it wasn't going to stack up. It was unfundable. No one wanted to build it. So we decided to just reevaluate it all. And the decision was, well, let's go big. Let's take it out of council's, hands and put it into a state government level and get a state significant approval on that. We superseded the council on that. And we had to go and get people to do this for us, or someone to do this for us without spending a dollar, because we didn't have it. And we went to tender. Everything in this new government's program was transparent. It wasn't going to be, you got a mate here and a mate there. We went to tender. I think we got 44 applications or something like that. Only 3 of them really in their tenders honestly put forward a proposition which was on our terms, and that was, you're on a success fee. So if you want to advance a property scheme on this site, you have to do it on your coin until such time as it's developed. And that wasn't easy to do, but we were very honest in this opening the tender. We got a property development person, David Hines, who said, well, I'll work for it. I'll do it for you. I've got to say, a very underrated person in the history of the Sharks. He was a property guy who had other consultancies going on, but put everything into this to get it to a stage. He ran the tenders for when we looked for developers that were going to come in and do it and all that. Incredible guy. So anyway, we found someone who said, yeah, we'll advance the architectural plans, the planning model. We'll do all that. And we'll do that on the basis that there's going to be profit share going forward. You'll get your value for the land every time an apartment is sold. The club will profit from that. And we'll pay for it all. And when we get the approval, we'll write you a check for $10 million dollars, which will get you out of trouble. And then the bank totally revalued it. The main one was our land value went from $4 million. So at the start of this, when we went in, the club had a debt to the St George Bank of 13.75 million.
Yeah, I remember it was
losing 3.5 a year in cash flow. And the land value, even with the current approval on it, was 4 to 6 million. So as a bank asset, we were insolvent. We were in a big problem. Yep. So they came to us. They said, we're going to need you, Damian. We need you to run the consultancy. You've got to get public. You've got to get in the community, see what they really want. And that was a long process. I think 26th of August 2012 was when the state government finally approved that particular development. And it straight away, we got the 10 in. The debt came right down because we'd been saving $1.5 million or $2 million a year for those 3 years as well. Yeah. It cleared the debt of the club. We weren't any longer losing that much money. And our land value had gone to 40 million in that thing. So it was a big turnaround. Now, it was all staged and there was all sort of plans, and it was always around the planning merit. I don't think you ever once saw me come out and go, state government, you've got to approve this or these sharks are going to die. And we made that a very clear decision because it's irrelevant, mate. We're building a shed load of apartments and commercial. It has to work for our community first and foremost. Anyway, so that was all done, and it was a good deal. What happened then is I left the club in 2013. Craig Douglas left the club in 2013, and the club was very, very vulnerable at that time.
Well, still vulnerable. It's been vulnerable for 15 years.
40, mate. Hey,
maybe even 40. You know what? It's still vulnerable.
Mate, people don't like us in rugby league in Australia. They don't like us winning a game of football. They don't like us developing the land. They don't like us being self-sustainable. They never liked it. They don't. And it's the ones that can't win many games up the road that mainly drive that in their old guard. Right? But that's fine. I've got no problem with that. We just crack on and do it our own way. And I think deep down as Sharks fans, we love that, you know. So that's all good. But we're very vulnerable. So as I understand it, and look, because of the way things happen, and we'll get to that in 2013, the worst thing that happened then was people, because of the nature of it, you're either with the coach or not, and they stopped ringing and they stopped asking, and they just said, nah, you can't be here. So Craig and I didn't have the ability to be in the room and look the people in the eye that had made the development deals in the spirit they were and all that and go, that's not on, mate. You know that. Don't you dare do that. You owe the club this, this, and this, and this. So when they were rewritten, the original company got sold to a Chinese consortium, right? So straight away they lost some strength in able to negotiate there. They allowed a full redevelopment of the Lees Club side where that airspace was sold for value, but was that the right value? And I would never judge it because I wasn't there. So I'm not going to retrospect. I don't know. So that's where what I'm saying is the conception and all that and the spirit that was done. And as soon as the people weren't there that did that with those people in those deals, hey, when the cat's away, the mice will play, you know? And in the property deals, people will go, oh, well, he's not here anymore. We don't have to worry about letting him down. We can do this and that. And that's where I think, hey, but nevertheless, it's a very, very good development. It saved the football club. It's made the club very wealthy in a lot of ways in terms of property. I think that the board with Dino and Steve have made some exceptional property decisions elsewhere to support that. I think the way they've handled moving away, Carney, mate, they know what they're doing. They're doing a great job.
Spot on. Carney's a great buy.
And they will solve the Lees Club. And they are solving the Lees Club side. They managed to trade through without that. Imagine once it's up and running. Do you know what a fillip, what a massive impetus. So, hey, there's no perfect land deals or anything out there, but that's in a nutshell my views on where the development. Now, I was down in May. Steve and Dino walked me around the place before it opened and that, and it was a brilliant, mate, it was a great day for them. I loved seeing it all. I love seeing what they're doing. They're good guys who made me feel, very grateful for their time and to look around and be there. We had a chat about some options, some other things that could be done. And I'm sort of urging them to be brave on that side still. I think, I could talk openly. the Quest Apartment deal, the NRL built that, the Lees Club, the land space above it. My view is, as a club, we should be greedier and go harder and really complete that site in a way that others have completed the site in their space. That's my big driver, and I've talked to them about that. So.
Well, Damo, you mentioned being brave. When you were at the helm at the Sharks, you were certainly brave. There was the party in the park and some pretty innovative sponsorship style, Shark energy drink, which we've touched on a lot on this one. We were incredibly unlucky.
Why does that get mentioned? Talk to me about that, because it's just everyone wants to ask about it. Talk to me about it.
Because it was
Matty,
it's your favourite.
I was talking to Boldo about I was listening to the interview with Shanaz today, and it was perfect synergy, and it's just a massive shame that it fell through. Obviously, you talk on there about how unfortunately it was the distributor that they were up against, Red Bull, and all the Coca-Cola, Amatil, and all those
toughest market in the world. That
tough market.
How do you sell a sponsorship demo for the Sharks when you've just gone through all of that stuff?
No, you don't, mate. You don't. One of the real disappointing things for me during my time there was this rather un-Australian stance from the media and other clubs who were like, Sharks can't get a sponsor. Sharks can only get 300,000 for that little Sharks. I mean, hang on. 100,000 would be a result for us. Whatever happened to backing the guys that are fighting their way out of trouble? When did it become embarrassing to be poor in this country and to be a battler and to fight out? When is that worthy of a Denny Widler or whoever throwing mud? Josh Masood. Why is that something to ridicule? And it infuriated me. I went, hang on, where's that battling spirit? People going, good on the Sharks. They found something. Love that. And it was in NRL council meetings with other clubs. Just go, I remember I was at Brisbane away talking with their directors and their CEO, and I quite like him, And during the game, some wag of one of the sponsors had sort of made a joke like, you should get Paul, their CEO, get Paul down to Cronulla, mate. He'll sort it all out for you, get him in as CEO. And I said something like, mate, we can't afford the 300,000 salary, And do you know what? They all laughed. They went, 300? Mate, I wouldn't get out for double that, right? And then I thought...
Never mind. One team town in Brisbane in a city of 2 million people. Yeah,
but it was more that ridicule going, not understanding our position. So Shark Energy was lucky I saw it, and the distributors did a good job of putting it on. I loved it if it had gone deeper and further, but they've never broken into the Australian market. Thailand, they're flying in other areas. It was just one of those ones which we were on the lookout for anything, mate, at the time.
Well, you also had the Party in the Park initiative, didn't you? And then what other ones did you have that I'm trying to remember?
I've got to be honest, that was conceived in the May when we sort of came in. It was already on the board. Paul Donaghy had done great work with that and things beforehand. And we ran with that, mate. But look, what was that, 2009? That's before its time. I mean, I know the market over here. If you're a football racing, horse racing club, a rugby club, and you're not putting 2 or 3 events on in your break period, you're struggling. I mean, that little bit of revenue is substantial for a club.
Yeah. Well, Nottingham Forest had to take that, did they? Just down the road from you, Damo?
They did, mate. Forest to go that. Look, I was only in a meeting yesterday, talking about the London Stadium guys with their CEO. Mate, these guys, I mean, the market is so big. I mean, you've got Gracie Abrams, Olivia Rodrigo, Beyonce, the Rolling Stones. This is what all the stadia in London are fighting for, do you know? And then you've got all these periphery ones, your little mixes, your take that's and things which are at every race club. So, no, it needs to happen. I don't know if it's happening much at the provincial grounds in Australia.
I remember you talking about it. It should be an entertainment complex.
Needs to be, mate. You pay rates, you heat it, you do everything for it 365 days a year, mate. And that's where Shark Park got into trouble over the years, in other grounds as well, by the way, because they're not built with nice toilets for the family and, accessible toilets and sensory rooms and areas you can get out of the elements if it's raining. They're not built like that. So any renovations should be done with a way to say, yeah, we can stick a band in there.
Now, you mentioned managing the media. and Danny Widener and the likes. I've long had a thought that the Sharks are not as good at managing the media as perhaps they could be, and sometimes we're susceptible to internal leaks. What's your take on your time as chairman and managing the media, and how did you find that, and what's some stories that you perhaps have?
There's a reason for that, Boldo. There's a reason, and you bang on. You're 100% right. Our club has been riddled with leakers for a long time.
Yeah.
And you'd be surprised. I think you would have seen, I hope you would have seen, I know I felt quite comfortable generally that our board was rock solid. The board leaks sort of dried up once we took over, and those new people coming in that level of governance. There were one or two occasions where one or two directors from the old board sort of wanted to have a crack at me and leaked, but they got found out pretty quickly. The big problem is, mate, and I don't know how common knowledge it is, but rugby league players, a couple of them get paid cash by some of the major networks to give them stories every week.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line.
And when you're a team that perhaps is not able to compete as much with some of the other teams on the salary cap, you've got to accept that Paul Gallen's going to appear on the footy show and is going to get a couple extra $100,000 out of that.
Well, I didn't use names, but I can tell you that I found out that Shark Energy weren't renewing from a gossip columnist in the paper on a Sunday morning.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And that was like, they can only get him for 1 year, and it was a 3-year deal, but Sharks can't even keep that sponsorship. Yeah, mate, one, they gave us their money. Two, it wasn't their fault their distribution fell through. They were appalled and upset that they couldn't do it, all this. But that's because a player just happened to walk through the office upstairs in the lease. Club boy, commercial guys down in the dumps about it, going, I can't believe this and all that. Leaves, gets in his car. I'll earn my $500, mate, let me tell you.
I don't think people realise how difficult, Damo, it is to land those sponsorship deals. So if you're there as a full-time team sitting there in these clubs trying to build, presentation and finding the right brands that mix with your team, and the difference for someone's life for landing one of those sponsorship deals, it is life-changing. If the Sharks could land $1 million for the stadium name sponsor for next year, that would be game-changing not only for the team but also for the sponsorship team. That would be a major win for them. So
you ask about managing the media, mate. That should have we should have had 3 or 4 days to for the sponsor and for us to put a story out around that in our words in a positive way, to give them the respect for coming on, to not ruin the poor lady that ran that for their sponsorship in their company. And instead they're in going, what's this in the paper? They're from Brisbane.
You also do Shark Energy drink in at the same time because they're suddenly revealed that they've not got distribution.
They did all that, and you know what? For a bit of pocket money, to keep in with the gossip columnists. Now, there weren't many of that, but there was enough, which really made at the club at that time very difficult to manage the media through no fault of the board or the governance or anything of that nature. Anyway, that's why I think it is difficult. I always take an approach of being honest with the media. I think the lack of a strong media manager at the club was very difficult for me because they'd give my number out, mate. They shouldn't have my number. Shouldn't have my phone number. One of the big riders was a season ticket holder, so sort of demanded that as a season ticket holder, he should have access to the chairman and the CEO. What do you say with that?
Well, I think I know who that is. What is your relationship with Buzz Rossfield?
Mate, to be fair, always feel a pretty decent guy that was around the place and, all that. But leopards don't change their spots. He's an old school journalist out there hunting for a scoop. That's what he's doing. And he obviously played the 3-card trip with me and I got done, and that was a massive mistake of mine. But to be fair, I was over in the UK and I just happened to read that he had a really tough time for some gambling stuff or something. I can't remember the story, but the story was on him. So I actually messaged him and said, mate, I hope you're doing okay. I know what it's like. Are you okay, man? Because I don't think they realise the effect they have on people doing their jobs. I think one in particular who had a fight with a tree in Balmain is probably learning to understand the vitriol and the spite at some of the things they say, which is uninformed, or being told to them by a player who you didn't give an improved contract to, and they fail to get both sides, but they lay the boot in. And I just hope they understand a little bit of empathy and kindness, having been on the other side. I wouldn't wish it on anyone. But
should Sharks fans be grumpy with Buzz Rossfield, though, Damo? Or should they? I know one Sharks fan who may be currently on this podcast might have given him a bit of shtick one time.
Make a decision on it, mate. I think for me, I don't think he's always acted as a Sharks fan and what you'd expect Boldo to act like, or someone on that bus and all that. Yeah. That's my view as a fan of the club.
There are times when you're the journalist, and there are some times when you just got to be like, I'm just going to be a Sharks fan right now.
But there never
That's
is.
a serve I gave him for.
There never is, though, Matt. There never is. You're a journalist or you're not.
Yeah.
You never
right.
forget what you hear or know. And so I think it's impossible to be a good fan of a club and a journalist.
I think it's a huge mark to your integrity and your, I suppose, compassion for others, and seeing that. And hopefully for him and the one that had the fight with the tree, and that they eventually, I suppose, change for the better regarding all of that. On a tangent, I suppose, in amongst all that, we talked about the development. One big takeaway I've taken out of other interviews with yourself is the approach to the, I suppose, the way that the federal and state members met the development at the time. And you, quote unquote, basically said, we've got to take the emotion and the heat and the politics out of it and just let it, come to, I suppose, be treated on its merits, which would have been an enormously difficult decision. How did you? It was the right one. I take my hat off to it. I think it was phenomenal, because who knows what would have happened if it did become a slangy match, both in the voting system and the impartial state government system alike. How long did it take to come to that, I suppose, conclusion of approach? Was it your decision, or was it a board decision?
It was from day one, mate, if I'm honest, because it was a moral decision. Our supporter base, who cared so much for this club to survive, were also our local constituents. They're our members, our season ticket holders that are on our doorstep. And plenty of people who love that club were very apprehensive around 14-story buildings being built on that parcel of land. I totally get that. So it was a really easy one just to go, this has to stack up, because I would have had a real problem if it didn't stack up on planning merit.
Yeah.
I don't think I wouldn't have had the energy, mate, to stand there and sell this development that I really didn't believe was best for the area.
Agreed. The key bit, I suppose, I was taking out is it seems like it's such a slap in the face that you're working pro bono, you're putting all this effort together, you're trying to save the club, and then something that's better for the area, and you're having two key influential members in the area going, nah, this is not right for the area. That's just like, I take my hat off to it, because I don't think I could have responded that way. I don't think I would have been smart enough to bite my tongue and go, let's just let it play out. I see where you're coming from, mate. Yeah.
Do you know who was there were two men who were wonderful sounding boards at that time for me, who saved me and the club from going at those two members, Mark Speakman and Scott Morrison, 100%. Because they both sat, we agreed, let's go on planning. It's not your area, bang, bang. And then in the lead of the following Monday, it's not going to happen. We don't want it to happen. And I remember I hung up on Scott Morrison. I remember the call. I was walking out of an office in Sydney, and I said, what are you doing? We just spoke on Friday. Now this. Oh, yeah, well, it's a party thing, and we've got to back Mark. He's the local member. I said, but Scott, you told me you wouldn't. Because, that's politics, Damian, and all that. I said, fine, that's politics. I hung up the phone. Didn't say goodbye, nothing. I got a call 7 minutes later. I'm coming out of a car park. It was Glenn Wheeler. And Glenn said, hello, mate. I said, hello, mate. How you going? He goes, you didn't just hang up on the local member, did you, the federal member? I went, yeah, I did. He went, talk to me about that. I explained. He goes, okay. He goes, you're right, but will you ring him back and apologise for doing that? I said, I don't know, mate. Like, he's really sold the club up the river here. He said, do it, and then come and we'll catch up for lunch and have a chat. And he explained politics to me. He explained the sensitivities and why. And he said, I think his words were, Damian is a D-Ed, but he's very powerful, and he's in that, and you've got to play the game. He was very good. The other was Malcolm Greer, who's a great supporter of the club, and that, who was much a Labor man and all that. And he actually said, "Look, I don't agree with their politics and that, mate, but this is how we'll play it. Catch your breath. I understand you're stressed and worried about it." So you need people like that, mate. And Glenn was a wonderful sounding board, mate, for things. He had a wonderful knack at just sort of dampening a room and saying, well, let's just keep it on track. So forever in debt, mate. But you're right. It was very tempting to just blow up on that.
Well, I think the rest of the population did, that's for sure. But wow, thank you.
Well, you mentioned Glenn, and obviously, look, I was going to mention Dane and the Wheeler family later, of a whole bunch of connections that we got out of the CSSC. Given that we know Glenn pretty well, obviously you know him better than we do. It's just heartbreaking, the accident and what happened to him, and just the energy that he had in and around the ground and supporting the CSSC, and being Dane's dad. It just sucks, really, doesn't it?
It does.
Just sucks.
It does, but my face just lit up. I felt it in even thinking of it, because when we started this conversation about my favourite shark and that, I had a chat about DNA not falling far from the tree, and
it doesn't.
And Steve and Matt Rogers and all that. And mate, as tragic as what happened to Glenn was and all that, mate, I look at his family, his wonderful daughters and his wife, and especially Dane, and the image of him daily that sort of is projected. He's even just been the ground announcer at the club, but in the auctioneering and what he does. And I'm very impressed daily by seeing where he's become and followed him.
Yeah, I'm proud of him too.
I think that that's enough for Glenn. I can guarantee it, mate. I'm sure he'd just be absolutely beaming in that and from it. So from a great tragedy, funnily enough, the right result in his legacy is being achieved, which is a horrible conundrum in life. It often throws that up, but it is. And would Dane be who he is if that tragedy doesn't happen? Perhaps not. He had to grow strongly, and mate, the adversity, it just builds these wonderful networks, and his family network's incredible. So yeah, look, a great shark man, Glenn, and always in our thoughts. Whenever someone comes over, we get a beer in London, he's the first we want to talk about. So
we just had funny moments at Shark Park. I just remember we were pretty sure it was the 2005 season, and we lost in the last round, and we were going down to play the Dragons in the first week of the semi-finals, and Glenn Wheeler's up there, 4 in a row, we're going to win. Just like not questioning it for a second. That, the Sharks were absolutely no chance in bloody hell of winning 4 matches in a row, but just the entertainment of Glenn Wheeler and, that stupid bloody jacket.
The big one was when we had him on toast at halftime at Shark Park, and he's played up
2011.
Oh, yeah.
It's the Dragons. Oh.
I was absolutely aghast. I thought, no, don't do that. We need to beat these guys. Don't play the song. And I went in, I said to the box, the announcer, said, come on, who's played that? Sorry, we'll get it off. And then Glenn sat there knowing he told him to put it on, just silent.
Well, I remember that happening. That was such a big moment for us, though, getting back in a game, and we'd had that big losing streak and they'd played so well. You could certainly justify it at the time. But the touchwooders and the superstitious out there, which I am not one of, but Matty is the captain of this.
You and I covered that game. That was where, what's his name, Nathan Gardner took the tap on halftime. Or take the 2, we go 6-0 up. He takes the tap and runs, and I think it was Tupou scored. And then we go 10-0 up at halftime rather than 6-0 up. And yeah, that was. And then
just so you know my mindset, David Gallup had come down that game, and he used to come a bit, he'd hide up in the broadcast area and duck out before the end. He was leaving out the back, 10 to go, 15 to go to beat the traffic. He walked there and went, congratulations, Damian, well done, mate. And I went, what? I said, no.
16-4 in the wet against the reigning premiers. Yeah.
I was really annoyed at him, Yeah.
Fair enough. Damo, the ASADA scandal, we got to ask you about it. How did you first actually hear of that all going down?
It had been brewing in Melbourne for a little bit.
Yep.
That was where the story was. 100% Essendon were the main sort of target. this name of this practitioner was sort of being bandied about. And then I remember Manly sort of started getting mentioned. I think the calves blood stuff was the year before and all that. So it sort of rang a little bit commonsensical that maybe this guy, whoever was doing this and had these, shall we say, alternate innovative views on performance, been practicing. So then it got a little bit hotter. You got to remember, we were 6 months after the property deal had been approved. And, we had, I've got to go back a little bit.
I can't imagine you signed off on the name Stephen Dank and specifically what he was going to do at the club. Surely it's that level of detail doesn't get to you?
So there's a couple of things. Firstly, we appointed a CEO back in 09, early 10 in Richard Fisk. He left because he was very much with Ricky. And a guy who resigned this week, I think, or retired from broadcast radio, was instrumental in that appointment, Ray Hadley. He used to ring and badger me, saying, you got to appoint this guy, you got to do it, I believe he's in for the job. I'm like, okay, yeah, we'll obviously consider it. Then he left when Ricky did, and we appointed a guy, John Osborne, who was the leading leagues club manager. He'd run Mingara, I think, up in the Central Coast, and was seen as like the Joey Johns of the registered club industry. We appointed him to take the property forward and, allow me to be a chairman a little bit and the board to govern. And he, I think it was about 8 weeks, he resigned and said, I think you're insolvent. I don't want to be part of it. I don't think this property deal is going to get through. I don't think the planning will get through. I don't think state government will give it. I'm out of here. So it was back in my lap again, and we had to push and push. Then we got it through in August 2012, and it was unbelievable. So we then we went to a recruitment firm to get a chief operating officer or a CEO in to take this forward now. We appointed someone who was New York based, an Australian, exceptional, and was ready to start February 13 and take it all forward. During this time, January, February, we got this sniff. That sniff became a bit of a snowball when they sort of said, there's probably 6 clubs in the NRL involved. Still no inkling we'd be involved. Deep down, I thought, well, knowing our luck, we're going to have to shovel some, here because it's just our club. But we're okay. We're actually a club again. We've got the finances in place. And then the NRL had a meeting. We weren't really mentioned, but the NRL had a meeting with all clubs in an office in at Circular Quay. And it was like, we're going to just let you know what ASADA are telling us. Because remember, the NRL got the tip-off from the government officials. There was all this deep, dark, you can be done for treason if you talk about it because it's a federal thing. Or there was this real language being used. It was weird.
Darkest day in sport was the
because they were putting this federal police thing on it where you can't talk about this and nothing, and it was the weirdest thing. So we went in this meeting and they sort of said, all clubs, you go in there, speak with the lawyers and all this, and they'll tell you if you've got a problem. And everyone agreed and said, yeah, okay. Said, but listen, there's a lot of press out there. Said, if let's just not talk to the press about this. Just go say no comment. We'll let you know. So we all did that. And I was there with, I think it was Keith Ward. Don't know if Shane was there. He wasn't. I think it was Keith Ward, Craig Douglas, and myself. And we went in and they said, look, yeah, you're one of the clubs with the problem. This guy was practicing and, there's been breaches of the doping code. And it was serious, really serious. Oh, shit, okay. Went outside into the lobby straight away and rang Darren Mooney, who was back at the club. I said, mate, you're never going to believe this. He went, oh, I'm shocked. I'll have to sit down. I said, okay, fine. We're going to come down and we're going to talk about it. By the time we got out, Perry, I think, was the CEO at Manly. He left. Phil Gould was at Panthers. He left. The guy at the Rooster. They'd all walked out and gone, it's not us. It's not us, to the press. We're clear, not us. We're the last to leave, right? And the press are like, Everyone says not them. We just like, no comment, and off we go. So straight away, we're getting absolutely,
Mauled.
Mauled's the right word. So prior to this, the week before this, Shane, we were fourth favourites in that competition in this February.
2013 was a good team.
Yeah, and the media was good to us. Our finance was sorted, and there was a good vibe. So the week before, Shane had said, I'm sick of our club being one of the 6 mentioned and all this. I said, look, I agree with you. So I went and saw him and Darren in their office, said, do we know this guy, this name? Because I can tell you one thing. We never had $1 to spend in 2011 when this is spoke. I guarantee you, there's no invoice from him. We couldn't afford it. I could barely afford Trent Elkin, this and that, our staff. You know that. So have we got anything to worry about? I said, no. Nothing to worry about. We know of the guy. The NRL sent him down to calibrate some GPS equipment, blah, blah, blah. He was here for a couple of days, a couple of hours. Fine. I said, well, because where we come from a club, marking our own homework don't mean much. I think we're not the most well-known club for behaviour and all that over the years. So let's get an independent report. I'll find some money in that. And that's when I brought Trish Kavanagh in, who was on the WADA board previously.
So that was the motivation for the Kavanagh report.
Let's just she'd been for 3 days. And this was with the blessing of the coach and the football manager and that. In fact, they wrote to me and said, that's the best bit of leadership I've ever seen. That's amazing. Thank you for doing that. I'm sick of being mentioned. This is my boys, my club, and we shouldn't be tainted with this. Thank you. Perfect.
Full transparency.
Perfect. Because my thought was, I'm going to take that report and I'm going to put it in every sponsorship meeting I'm in, and we're going to go, don't take my word for it. The magistrates, you got nothing to worry about. Because anything anyone want to talk about was, are you involved in this? Are you involved in this? No, we're not. We're not independent. So that's where it was. Soon after that meeting, the story had changed about the involvement, the time at the club, the fact that it had blown up in 2011, the involvement, questions had been asked, it had been not progressed to us at board level. It had just been, look, okay, fine, get rid of him, and then let's move on. Sorry, Doc, sorry this. Like, we'll behave now, basically. Which just absolutely saw us under a bus big time. Because there was a suggestion I should manage the report we commissioned and have that put in the dustbin, and that was me done, really. I think, obviously, being away, getting back to what I said, we'd have this CEO start and all that. I'd already had some commitments to be in America for 4 weeks for a work thing. The timing of that was poor, but it was a new world for us. It was the start of 2013. I didn't need to run the club every day anymore. Financially, we were all okay, and I could actually do a job again. So, obviously, when I got the call, I got badgered and told what was the truth, what I knew to be the truth in a offhanded comment, but it was obviously a front page story, and that made my position untenable. But it would have been anyway. I think I couldn't have fought, just like with the property, couldn't have fought for what I knew not to be right. We needed to take our medicine as a club. It was my view. We'd messed up. I think the intent was okay, but with so many questions that we couldn't answer as a club, and the people tasked with answering them couldn't answer when there was health and safety involved. That was enough for me, and it was just time.
Well, you had a good 4-year stint. Yeah, go, Matty.
So the key takeaway I got out, obviously, a lot of that was out of the Sam Schnazzy interview, and thank you for providing that summary there, was that the duty of care out of all of that. Obviously, there was that one-liner, unfortunately, that brought it all undone. Interesting. That was going to be my question going, if that didn't go to air or didn't occur, or that journalist didn't leak that, would you or the board or whatever survived? I suppose that answered in probably no.
No, I was going anyway, because I was going to rely on that independent report. And I was going to fight for any potential bans or any breaches, but I was adamant it couldn't be done with the people that allowed it to be an issue in the first place. And I always said, it didn't matter what transpired. Really didn't matter. I don't know if there were wider breaches. I don't know. It didn't matter. It mattered that there was 4 or 5 people who couldn't say what was being administered or done. To me, that was pretty major. You've got to understand, mate, we had a tough time, mate. We'd lost a player through a really poor illness, a great man in Johnny Manor. The club had been through a lot. So it just didn't sit right with me that we couldn't be flippant. We could be flippant with our process around our treatment of players. That was the bottom line for me.
That's great to hear because it's so hard. I mean, there's grey in everything, and that was an enormously emotion-charged time for. So as the club were flying high, the fans were, I suppose, over the bad times. And Boldo, you were aired on SBS News, walking out after picking up your season tickets on the Friday night, going, "This was our year," and that's all gone down. We all had our different ways.
Also, I was picking up the tickets at the last minute, Matty, because I never am organised enough to get them on time.
Standard process for yourself. But as a digress, but yet I suppose the entire fan base and the club and everyone else is trying to process this, and obviously you're trying to process as well, Damo, and it's just horrible how it all transpired. I think it was, obviously best intents and great. I mean, 11 years on, unfortunately, having this clarity now that at the time that clarity wasn't there, not through anyone's fault, just unfortunately the fog of all the horrible situation that it was. And I think that's my main beef with Phil Rothwell to make, put a name to that. But on the whole thing too, I think the deeper than that, why Manly was never questioned, why nothing further happened there, despite the fact that he was there for years, including over a premiership or 2. That's a tangent we won't touch on there. But thank you for that honesty there, because that's a huge, I suppose, tying of a bow on how that all went down.
I think at the time too, mate, you have choices, and I just think I think we're probably a better club for it. I think
you made the right one.
Look, in a perverse sort of way, I think it contributed to a mindset across the whole club come 2016 that allowed the club to be in a position where nothing was going to face that rugby league club, and not a last minute field goal, nothing. And that certainly wasn't designed. I'd take no credit for that. Believe me, you wouldn't wish.
I was going to say, D-Man, the origins of the premiership, some of that recruitment and getting Mooney in and the selection of Flanagan, and
you wouldn't wish what Damo went through. You wouldn't wish what Damo went through on anyone, any other people.
I'm just saying the adversity got that club so together in 2016 in a way that I don't know had been before, because you'd seen the worst, we'd felt the worst, everyone had been on their absolute tails, and it created a special environment, I think, in a toughness which reaped the rewards.
For want of a better term, post-traumatic growth is a buzzword, but it's true. That's a good take on it. Thank you. I've never thought of it that way. I've thought of the Boldo side of things, and obviously Fafita, Lewis, those players were starting to join the club in 2012, 2013, and then we went from there. But that's great, because obviously I don't think talked to us.
Mate, one thing that gets lost is, and when I said disappointed about the leaks and all that sort of stuff, despite the financial pressures, despite the governments, despite this overarching rule, don't let footy heads make decisions in this football club, it's got us where we are, we've got to be sensible. Despite all that, every single player and staff that the football manager wanted or the coach wanted, I found a way to do it. We hung on to one of the best players in the world at the time 3 or 4 times that demanded contract upgrades when we're at our worst. We made it happen. And that wasn't easy, mate, I tell you. But the thought of, on top of everything else, having him or her or walk out the door and go somewhere else was a bridge too far for me to serve that on the fan base and that. So, we got every single player that was wanted. And that's no mean feat, mate, because we didn't have all the third-party deals and all that other clubs had at the time.
Did you guys be there when we signed Todd Carney, or was that before?
Yeah.
You were involved in that, weren't you?
Yeah.
I think Todd Carney was an absolutely critical signing for us in terms of just turning around our belief and thought process. We can have a creative 5'8" and we can win these games. We have a goal kicker that can kick from the sideline, and he just made the rest of the team believe that we could win.
I've got a lot of time for Todd. I think Todd, one of the unluckiest, most cruelly talked about and treated rugby league players around. I think when you look back at his history, mate, he didn't kick a door down and try to assault a family in New York, mate. He hasn't got major crimes and charge sheets and assaults on people and all this sort of stuff where a number of NRL players have allowed to contribute in their careers, mate. Toddy has a few beers and does some stupid stuff, which we've all got 10 mates that have done equal or worse to. And I just always felt he's been an easy target for people where he doesn't deserve it compared to some of the other rap sheets of guys who have been allowed to play Origin. And I don't know. Yeah. That's just my view on him as an individual. And he was excellent at the club for us.
Oh, he was my favourite at the time. My mother was also very fond of Todd. He was just so good at kicking the goals and just some of the passing and stuff. But so how pivotal was Darren Mooney in the recruitment selections and picking the right squad and building that squad as it built towards 2016, you think?
So Darren came to us. We brought him in when Richard was at the club from the youth section at the West Tigers, under 20s or something, as an academy director he was there. And he certainly was instrumental in an Andrew Fafita coming into the club. He had Andrew at 18, 19, and that was a big signing. He was
massive.
Very big signing in his first, early days. He was massive for the club. Darren, a very good roster manager, very good cap manager. I think it was hard for Darren because we gave him full autonomy. That was the role he was coming into. I've got to say we advertised that role, and that was late 2009, 10. I wouldn't say we were blessed with people banging down the door to come to the. I think a lot to do was the salary that was on offer, and we were a problem club still at that time. So I'll always respect him immensely for coming in. It was a massive step up for him coming out of academy and taking that role on, but he took it with both hands. And he's a very good roster manager. Gets it done. So we find the budget. Shane at the time would sort of choose the players, and then Darren to get it done. Shane had a good network because he'd been assistant at the Origin for quite some time through his time at Roosters. So he knew who was who and what was what, and could. And
there are benefits of that network team, man, aren't there? Which is why Fitzgibbon was a bit more appealing than John Morris. That's a big factor, wasn't it?
It's very, very important. It's not just knowing who's available, who you want. It's knowing what they're being paid, where they are.
Yeah.
Right. It's knowing their terms.
Everyone's a good player at the right price.
Whether they're happy and all that. So, look, Darren did a great job. Shane, I've got to say, a great eye for a rugby league player and a very, very good rugby league coach. And he showed that. And that's why we put him in situ, because we could see that as the respect he had for the players and from the players as an assistant to Ricky. And they were a good team together, those two, in putting together. We had quite a succinct recruitment policy, if you remember. We weren't bringing in multitude because, look, I use the analogy here in football recruitment now, guys. If you give a young single parent, £25 a week or dollars a week, and that's what they got to feed their family with, put petrol in the car and all that. When they go into that supermarket, every one of those purchases will be the best researched, the best value. That's the rice we need, and that's the quality of that, and that's the cream we need because it keeps right. It's a beautifully balanced piece of recruitment, that 25 quid in what you purchase with it. And as a club, when that's your resources, you have to have that same approach. And we did through necessity. So we couldn't have a specky. There wasn't room for a specky. Or maybe he could come up because we couldn't afford to risk the 125 grand or whatever it was in the cap. And I do believe that when clubs, so if in 6 months' time you give that same single parent an extra 50 quid for the week, I can almost guarantee you that the attention to detail might not be as strong on each of those particular purchases because they've got a little bit of leeway and it's not quite as, getting it wrong isn't so important. So that's where we're at. And Shane and Darren did a very good job of it. When we got a player, we paid top dollar and we had to compete in the market, usually overs, by the way, a lot of the time. But that they got it right. They got it right in terms of the games per dollar.
No Carl Filligers in your time, D-man.
No Carl Filligers. I think he played one game and then
11 minutes.
Never seen it again.
Gets 11 minutes, D-man, is how much he played.
Was it that long?
Yeah, it was that long.
Penrith 2008.
Mate, we go on this pod. We go pretty obscure on some of the Sharks stuff.
Ricky was like that. Ricky did the same with a great player, Matty Wright, who was a very good 5'8" in my view, and athletic. And he missed a tackle under the sticks. He gave him his chance in first grade, and he went the wrong way or did something, never to be seen again. It's like, no, you'll never play again.
Brutal.
I remember watching Dane Nielsen play for the Sharks on the wing up at Gosford with you, Damo, and us going, Boldo, yep, he's a special one. This Nielsen, he's going to make the team, isn't he? And I'm like, special. You and I were like jumping on board, like thinking he's going to be the never seen again, never got a run.
He went to Storm and had quite a career,
exactly. Never seen for the Sharks again.
Yeah, no, and that can happen. It's horses for courses and all that. I mean, look, hey, there's players, isn't there? It's such an opinion, and I see it in football all the time. You got Dave Simmons. Dave would tear a room in half of Sharks fans in opinion. Had fair first grade career, by the way, and then
100
tries. A lot of tries.
100 tries. Wow. Not many players can say that.
You mentioned the UK, D-man. We'll take a slightly different tack. How is English football different from the NRL, and what have you been able to apply to your time at all your different English soccer clubs or football clubs?
It is much more ingrained as a way of life. It's part of the week. It's part.
Yeah, it is.
It really is, and we all love to go to games on Saturdays and all that. We love to talk about the rugby league during the week, but I wouldn't say it doesn't mean as much.
But it doesn't mean as much.
It doesn't mean as much. It's personal again about your great grandparents. It's personal around the guy who you've known at school all your life. It's a town, and the parochialism. You represent their life, their town. You embarrass the town when you're not going well, and you love it. Personal pride, mate. There's some dark areas in England that are very cold in the north and all that, and it is sometimes and often it is the only possible spark to the week is to give them a result. And I'm not saying that flippantly at all. I love it for that reason. Every week, the jeopardy on the result, it's phenomenally ingrained, and I think we could probably learn a lot from that because it hurts when you lose games in rugby league at home.
Yeah.
But the hurt here is still there on Thursday morning or in the town. It's incredible. It's just it's deep ingrained.
Also just the way you lose in soccer. A goal in the 96 minutes, it's so difficult to score and stuff. The other team scores on you at the last minute. It can just absolutely do you in. And I know from walking around Nottingham, they're 5th in the Premier League now. Difference between the city 6 months ago to now. They've just got a vibe and energy about them that's just a little bit different because one of their football clubs is one of the top teams in the Premier League. It just makes a big difference.
Yeah, but it genuinely makes an economic difference to the town or village or city you're in.
Yeah.
It does, mate. And you're going well, so more fans come every Saturday. I mean, having 2,500, 3,000 visitors into a town on a Saturday, mate, they spend money and everyone's happy. And it's quite impressive, in a lot of ways. And I love it. And I think if it wasn't for, I've been very, very well schooled and trained from my time at Cronulla to understand the importance and the desperation over here. Let me put it that way. I was very lucky to be at our club at a time when that level of gravitas and importance on getting it right was so important to our future and our life. And that's the bottom line expected over here. If you're lucky enough to work in football or to protect a club on behalf of the town and the supporters, that's a great baseline to have. And I don't know I could do it if I hadn't learned that from the club that I loved and it meant that much to.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Certainly gave you an understanding of of crisis management and financial difficulties and wanting to be able to sign players and not being able to do it.
It's more that it's just not a job, mate. It's not a job. Yeah. You know, these people will be here long before and long after anyone works for these clubs, and managers, coaches, doesn't matter, CEOs. So you just know how important it is, and that's great.
Have you found it easier, being that you don't obviously have that connection to the Sharks, your entire way through, your connection to Ebbsfleet and other clubs? Obviously, you're living and breathing at the moment, but is it different?
Slightly different, but it's not easier, mate. I think I still wear it very heavily. I feel the responsibility daily in it being a job. And so I'm not one that's able to sort of switch on the telly at night and just go, 9 a.m. I'll wander back in and hope everything's all right. So it's not easy. I feel the burden on behalf of thousands of people who come on a Saturday and want to get it right. And that has its downside. Of course it does. You don't switch off as much as you probably should. But I think it's a fair responsibility. And I'm lucky because I think the skill set and the bruises and the adversity I faced at Cronulla have set me up for that. And I often reference the club and I often reference it in tough times. I've gone into 3 clubs over here that were in bad ways, financially, mostly financially. But it's far more common over here for a football club to go belly up financially and shut down than it is in Australia. I can't think of when a club, was foreclosed on. We're probably the closest that there has been, to be fair, at Cronulla in 20 years. But I think I've often used the rule, and I've said, I know you're feeling bad. I know the pressure on you. I know the players aren't being paid. I know that they're protesting for a game. I know you're worried about your jobs and Christmas is in 3 months. But let me tell you a story about the Cronulla Sharks and look at where they are. And I've put pictures up of 2016 and I put pictures up of the CSSC. I said, these people wanted to be like you, like English football fans, and they love the club that much. Yeah. And then I put press clippings from 2008, 2009 up. I say the hole was deeper than you're in here now. So believe me, there's a pathway out, and it's a very good tool to use. That you're never really in a hole as deep as you perhaps think when you're in it.
That's definitely.
I know. Sorry, Boldo. Just one more question on that, I suppose. I know you mentioned to Sam a couple or 3 years ago now how bad away you were in 2013 when you left the club. I suppose I was going to say thank you for all that you put in, because obviously it's a huge sacrifice to yourself, your family, all of your connections during that time, having a son born during that time, having your 2 young daughters in that time as well, and everything you gave up for the club. And you're in a bad way. How are you going now? Because obviously you haven't let the pressure cooker release it all now that you're back into the furnace over in the UK for a long time now. So how are you going?
Yeah. Look, for me, I'm doing good, thanks, mate. I think I learned so much on that was, what was it? How long ago was it? 2013. It's
11 years. 11 and a half years.
What I've got to say, and I don't mind being really open with you guys, where the world, particularly in sport, but all businesses, things with podcasts and everything has come on, there's a different awareness on self-awareness and understanding, particularly as men that are working in high-profile positions or pressurized positions, just earning for your family and your kids every day. There's a new awareness on mental health, I think, and dealing with pressures. And I don't think the NRL or Australian media generally 10 years ago had any clue, or I don't think it was
None.
even in. There wasn't any view on go easy on him, mate. Do you know? There wasn't. When we talked about the incidents, the poor lads, the journalist most recently had, my first thought was, mate, he needs. I hope he's okay. Do you know? There was none of that back then, and that upsets me. Because I felt it, and but when you ask how I am now, I'm good as gold because that taught me a lot. It taught me how to switch off. It taught me how to not read Facebook or this and that, and just get through it. I mean, we're doing a tough time at the moment. We're not winning football games. We've got everything else pretty much right. But for the love of God and through all the trying and that and changing in managers, we got some recruitment wrong and it's tough. Now, that's okay. We'll be okay, and I'm sure we'll get out of it. But you could feel it getting on top of you a little bit. You always think back and you've got tools. I'm very blessed with my family, and we take, a day and a half off if we can and drive over into Bruges or Brussels. And, we went and visited Ypres and the War Memorial a few weeks ago for an overnight. You have to take that time, mate, and you have to dig in and do it. You still have your moments. It's, a goal goes in and you get the kick in the guts and you just have to walk out in the car park for 5 minutes and just, you have to. But, it teaches you well, mate. And I'd encourage everyone to keep going down that path, to just have that awareness. I think the world generally, as evil as it can be, I think it's a little bit more kinder in terms of empathy for helping people deal with things. That'd be my general take.
I think that's definitely right. Well, look, Damo, your legacy with the Sharks and the CSSC setup here's something that's definitely going to put a smile on everyone's faces. Is Boldo, I've compiled the top 5 ever CSSC chants.
Have you got a list there of them?
I have got a list. Yeah, I've got a whole.
You put it number 1. I know. I guarantee I know.
Oh, would you think which one I put number 1, or you think which one is the number 1?
This is the world according to Boldo.
Put number 1.
All right. Well, early days CSSC Sharks chants compiled.
Is Damo going to put it there first?
I'm going to write it down here on a bit of paper.
You write it down. What you think I put as number 1?
I just know you, mate. I just know what. There
is one that I do particularly like.
I know, and I guarantee it's on the list. Go on, I've written it down.
It's definitely on the list. All right. So for those that don't know, Damian and I, and Maddie, we all met in, 2006 was the origins of the CSSC then, which was set up following a group of Sharks fans who were basically on the hill, a bit frustrated that the Sharks fans got owned by Benji and West Tigers, and there was a Tigers chant at Balmain. I think is the way that the story goes, but Damo, you can correct me if I'm wrong.
Tigers at Shark Park 05, 46-6, Benji stepping 1,000 players, all that stuff. And there was more Tigers fans than Sharks. There was 18,000 people there, and there was about 12,000 Tigers fans. It was horrid.
Who was that fulcrum that were there? Because there's some great
Dane
guys.
Wheeler, Kieran Hayden, Christian Hodgson.
I got photos of them coming up, so no spoilers. We got a good photo collage of
Ben McGregor, Liam Rogers, Stevie Mason.
Yeah, a bunch of legends.
Glenn
and
Thompson.
We put Jimmy Small Hands. Oh, small, as Damo would say, small in hands, but not by reputation, Damo. I believe
100%.
Love you, Jimmy.
Good on you, Jimmy. All right. So anyway, the CSSC had a whole bunch of chants, and they basically took the English football view of how can we celebrate the players. And it was a special time to be a Sharks fan. And so of the top 5 CSSC chants, this is my compilation of the top 5. So number 1 is the Pom 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 Pom, the popcorn song. There we go.
Pom Pom Pom. I knew that. I've not talked to you for 10 years, and there it is.
Well, you know,
number 5 though. It's not number 1.
Yeah. Well, the thing is it wasn't the best chant, but it was a much maligned player, and so the fun of the Pom 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 chant was just how much fun it was when you're like, Pomeroy, you drop the ball, and then 5 minutes later you're like, Pom 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 Pom. And that chant was, I'm pretty sure that was the brainchild of Mick Roach, wasn't it, Damo?
I'm pretty sure it was you, mate. I thought it was a trash chant, honestly. But I've never liked that chant. I just never liked that tune, that popcorn song. It just annoyed the hell out of me. That was the only reason, but yeah.
The best part looking at these old matches is seeing Ben Pomeroy, I think it was against Parramatta in like 06 or 07, scoring a try like Ben Barber did in the grand final off the back of a scrum. A I think it was Mitch Brown, I think, breaking off the back and giving it to him. So there you go, only about 8 years early.
Matt Axiex come through in the comments and said the key change. That's right, because remember that pom, 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 pom. All right, so that comes in at number 5.
You were leading that like you're in the Philharmonic Orchestra. Go, guys, key change. We're a bunch of guys drinking cans at the football at Penrith, and you're yelling key change. It was beautiful. I was like, wow, what going from no key to another no key, you know?
Correct. All right, so pom, 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 pom comes in at number 5. I put this one in at number 4 just for the ingenuity of it. The Mr. G, he's a tiny fullback with a sick habit for tries. So taken from the Mr. G Summer Heights High.
Very good.
Musical.
Very good.
This one it was funny because that song was just so wrong to sing, and it was just so untoward. Like, oh, is this the right song they should be singing? And Brett Carney was such a terrific player in that period for the Sharks, wasn't he?
Very good, very good. One of the great utilities of our time, along with Preston Campbell, I'd put there. I think he's outstanding.
Yeah, he just got done in by the injuries, didn't he?
Yeah.
All right, so tiny, full, sick habit for tries. That comes in at number 4. In at number 3 is with a knick-knack, paddywhack, give the dog a bone, the Greg Bird chant, which was also in many ways inappropriate, which had many verses. Damo, can you remember all
Shane
the verses?
Martini too, wasn't it? Well,
Yep, so there was one was I'd knew
Fusion
Shane
ran about
Martini
2.
too. There's 2 more.
We'll be at Fusion around about 2. And I think there was a reference to Lara Bingle.
Yeah, we've got Lara's number 2.
Correct.
We've got Lara's number 2. They're the 3.
It was also then it went to a noddy for the 4 first. We love you, even though you're 4'2", which was
That's right.
Yeah.
That was very, very good. That went.
So you can imagine how good the next 2 must be if that one's coming. If that one's, how could I make the pom pom chant better than these 2 so far? Come on,
key oversights as well. But
all right, on next, number 2 on Boldo's list of all-time CSSC chants is the Run to Paradise, Darren Albert. That one.
Ooh, okay.
That was pretty good chant.
We did it for Stapo as well and a few others. Yeah.
Okay.
You were always.
We'll meet you at the corn post. That's where you like to score.
That one was Run to Paradise by the choir boys, and so
it seemed to be wordy for me though. It wasn't quite as simple and as thick-headed as the knick-knack paddywhack. You know, it was a little bit too intricate for me to Run to Paradise.
Yeah, it was Albert. You were always going to be the one. You only ever dummy just for fun as you run to the try line. Albert, we'll meet you at the corner post. It's where you seem to score the most as you run to the try line.
Beautiful. Hey, Taylor Swift will be happy with those lyrics.
Oh, Taylor Swift.
So beautifully put together.
So after
and there was a final line. There was a final line. It was Pomeroy. We don't really like you anymore. All you ever do is drop the ball. Anyway.
Oh wow.
As you run to the try line.
That's not very nice.
Yeah, that one came a little bit later, D-Man. When. All right, so number 1 on Boldo's all-time list of Sharks fans' chants is "Put your hands up for De Gois." I think is
outstanding.
Is the outstanding number 1. Just
07
because
at Homebush was the peak of that.
Was
it, Matt? Because you might remember. I think there was a better one.
There's a few. I've got actually five honorable mentions off
let's
the top.
Keep talking about "Put Your Hands Up." So "Put Your Hands Up" was the song by Fetty Legrand, and it was the beauty of "Put Your Hands Up" was the silence that came after the "Put Your Hands Up." So it was the "Put your hands up," and we'd all put our hands up, and it was just a deafening silence around.
I love that hookup, wasn't it?
Yeah,
I love that hookup. Dig it, 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 dig it.
It was probably bouncy. It was really good.
It was
the one
terrific.
I remember the most was Campbelltown, West Tigers Campbelltown, and he's gone from dummy half right from our side and scooted through, and it was early in the match. He's gone just from halfway and scored, and because it wasn't overly packed Campbelltown at the time, and it just this thing echoed around the ground. And as he's coming back to halfway for the kickoff, Pomeroy was playing as well. And all you could do was put your hands up and then the break. And then it was like, "Put your hands up for De Gois." I love that hook. And Pomeroy's in tears, mate, laughing because the whole place could hear it.
They could hear
that's
it.
the problem. Yeah.
I reckon that's a fair number 1, the De Gois one, Damo. What do you
I
think?
agree with you, mate. No, I totally agree. I think it's a great choice.
It's a good list. Sorry for those viewers who aren't aware of what we're talking about right now. My 6-year-old, I think, is still in shock at Boldo doing a rendition of that at the win over the Cowboys at Allianz about a month or two ago. But he might get a full experience one day. Yeah, it still gets a run despite the fact he's been gone a long time. But some honourable mentions I've got here. So there was Ole, Benny Ross, Vangana, Phil Bailey, Wonderwall, number 4. That was probably close to my favourite.
I could have put that one at number 4. Maybe that should have put
Dustin Cooper, hallelujah. But now we're getting into the big ones here. So Luke Douglas, as the Ants go marching 2x2, as his Carla said, he was a shark, Douglas. Anyway, a bit too wordy, Damo, but that was very clever. But Tomo's got red hair, living on a prayer. That was huge. 06 beating the Dragons at home. Lance Thompson's first match against the Dragons after the way he left the club, scoring the opening try, kicking the last goal. We won 30-10 or whatever it was, 30-12. Magic times with the wigs and everything. That was just after CLC form, but that was amazing times.
I think we captured. And then there was also the greatest club in the world with Dougie and Nori, Fraser and Pommy, Buster and CUCU was also very good.
Great chant. Unfortunately, we lost all 4 or 5 of those players within about 6 months of that being put together. But that's classic. One final point on the CLC before we change tact and close up with you two. I do recall the 08 quarterfinal against Canberra at home. And there was some talk on the forum about people throwing beers and how that wasn't a good look, and some people, including my good mate from Dubbo, Drew Irvine, no relation to Damian. He brought his now wife out, and she went to her first Sharks game since 08 at the prelim final against the Panthers about a month ago, because she got covered in beer by some guy called David Bolderman and another guy called Scott Latino. And anyway, so Boldo is vehemently denying this, and then Damian Irvine, Beaker, finds a GIF somehow. I can't find any more, but it was a great Fox Sports coverage shot of Lats and Boldo front row charging their beers and throwing them up, and Boldo's still denying it, going that didn't happen. Didn't happen.
So let's just say that the accusation came out on the forums at the time, Damo, and I remember just saying like, that wasn't me. What are you talking about? And then Beaker Shark comes through with the comment, David, I'm pretty sure that this give is going to be pretty self-explanatory. And then Lats comes out and then you totally owned me. And then Lats comes out and immediately apologizing, like, oh, no, it's no problem. And then I come out with I still don't think it was me. I just couldn't resist.
Mate, there's no chance you would ever concede, ever, not being the golden-haired, blue-eyed champion that you see yourself at in the mirror every day. Yes, right.
I'm sure it was Chris Kelly and Matt Williams that were actually the ones.
I was about 5 rows behind wearing it. I was happy.
We were very excited that match, weren't we, when the Sharks beat the Raiders? And then we were so excited a couple of days later when the Warriors did the job for us. And that's why that 2008
Michael Witt.
Yeah, we're not putting put the ball down, you dickhead.
Put the ball down in the corner. I was delivering pizzas, listening to that, going, "What just happened? We got the week off. How good!" So crazy times. Good.
All right. Well, we'll close the show. I'm going to show the other thing I've got for you.
Townsville or something by the look.
Yeah, that was a Townsville. So that was 2009 Townsville, D-Man.
There's Ryan Gagan in the background.
Is that Ryan Gagan in the background? Macca.
Is that Bryn?
And Bryn's all the way at the back.
Yeah,
Bell and Laurentini's there. And I don't know who's sitting to your right there, Damo. Mick Roach is there.
That's a good point.
I can picture his face. I'll find that out. I can think about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we can only see half of his face. So it's a little bit tough to tell, isn't it?
No, but I can picture it just from that. Nice guy. Can't think.
Georgie Belizia.
Georgie Belizia gets a run in a little bit. So I picked out Damian. I've got a lot of photos of you and me. So there are some of my favourites over there. Here is Damian Irvine.
It would have been a good night on the way back from a win by the look of it.
I'm pretty sure that's the Canberra bus.
Yeah, it looks
like a Canberra, maybe that mini bus that we had.
Yeah.
I think that's the Canberra bus. And then we've got, I don't know what you're scared
of. What's going on there?
I don't know what is going on. Stevie Mason is doing something and you're like, ooh.
I'd say we've won there.
I think definitely it looked like we'd won. This is the photo of you that was in the papers that did the round when you, and I put this on the thumbnail.
This is before a game. That's before a game, mate. Yeah, when the board elections had just come out.
Correct. And I thought this really captured you individually from your time in terms of it? It just says a few things. One is it's, hey, I'm a fan. One. Two, I'm part of the supporters club, so I'm wearing the supporters club scarf, not the club scarf. But also what a lot of people may not remember about the D-Man is you were also very stylish, mate. And so I also really like that jacket. So I remember thinking, yeah, of course, Damian bloody Irvine there with his stylish jacket.
Doesn't fit me anymore. I don't know where it is. But I look at that, mate. I think, geez, you had no idea, son, what you were about to get into.
Absolutely. Absolutely none. Here's Damian giving me a massage.
Yeah, look at that. Manly Hill, that is for sure. Brookvale.
Round one.
Yep,
round
that's
108.
definitely Manly Hill. I'm pretty sure that's the 2008 or maybe the 2007.
Round 8. No, the shirts round 8 because the ones before were the Costy Seafood shirts. They're different ones.
Yeah, they were earlier. So there you go, give me a massage. There's us with you.
Brother.
Well, there's you with your brother.
Yeah, and that's
my ex-girlfriend Lauren. Yeah. So your brother was
mate, you still in touch, sure?
Yeah, still in touch. She's got 2 kids now, living up on the Central Coast. Lovely girl. She's still got one of my bloody Sharks jerseys actually, and still wears it and says I'm not getting it back.
Happy days. That's great. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, you're glad that I haven't got one of my favourite jerseys, or that we're still in touch?
Just that she's got that connection still, mate. That's
yeah, it cool. Is lovely. It is lovely. This is the group that was up in Townsville. Pretty sure that's the 2008 group.
Team photo. Look at that.
Team photo up there in the mall. There's Macca not paying attention. Front row, middle row up at the centre. Mick Roach at the front.
Of all people, not to be looking at the camera in proper pose, Macca would be devastated by that. He was Mr. Organiser, so
he was.
It's got to be deliberate. I reckon that one.
There's Parko up there in the middle, right? And then we've got, do you remember this one? That ink car that we hired.
Island off of
Magnetic
Townsville. We went wakeboarding, didn't we? On the pool behind the boat. On the
we did indeed. There it is.
There we are.
There we are. Because I remember you just said, why wouldn't we go wakeboarding behind the boat? You're like, I'll go with you, Boldo. And so then we did.
I'm pretty sure we both ended up getting flipped high into the air at some
Yeah,
stage.
we were trying to flip each other. Yeah, that's right. Jeez, they were good times, weren't they? And then what was also good about those times, D-Man, and this is a photo with one of the Brisbane fans, and we've become mates with Ryan, is just the connection with people that love the Sharks internationally. So it's a photo of
he looks a bit like a Thunderbird there, though, but he's a great guy.
Yeah.
JC7858392 or whatever his damn call sign was. There's Roachy.
Oh, my Lord. What's he drinking there?
I don't know.
Flops bucket by the look of it.
Now, there's a famous story of Damian Irvine down in Melbourne where we were down there for, round 2 for 2008. And Damian Irvine, not being sure what to get a drink, goes up to the bartender and gets quizzed and asks him, what do you think I should get? I want to try everything. And the bartender made some comment and Damian Irvine says, don't tell me that what I can do or can't do, and then proceeds to, I'll have one of everything you've got. And so then... and then does it round. And then literally there's like 20 CSSC people just sitting there, and then just like every single different type of vodka cruiser would come up, different types of beers. And then you're just like, what do you want? It's like, I guess I'll have this type. Do you remember doing that, Tamer?
It's a vague memory.
It was absolutely hilarious.
Or something where I think there's a little backpacker bar, something description where
there was a backpacker bar.
Possible, I think.
And there's you and me again, and another photo of us. I'm not sure where that one is. Might be in Canberra or something. There's you getting arrested by the police with Stevie Mason. Can't remember what you're doing there.
No, I don't know.
Who knows? There's you with Scott Latino's wife, Casey, on another CSSC.
Yeah, Casey, of course. And I remember that fella.
Yeah, his name was Ray.
Ray. Yeah, right.
His name was Ray. He's now a really famous hairdresser.
Is he? Well, it makes sense. You can't get two opposite haircuts there, two more opposite.
You can't, can you? Can you? There's you turning up to my birthday with a bunch of buddies of mine and Tori Brosselin, who's one of the founders of the CSSC, big tall Tori.
Tori, of course. Yeah, right.
Tori, and I'm sure you don't know who any of those girls are in that row. They're all friends of mine at my birthday at the time. Now, this one I found. Who the hell were these girls on the left, D-Man?
They were... one was a staff of mine at the shop and a friends from Canada or America, I think. They were back.
That's right. They were American, weren't they?
Yeah, she had friends visiting, so we took them to the Sharks, of course. That was their big night out in Sydney.
Of course.
They came to watch the game. They've got no idea about wear these shirts, sing these songs, and have a good time. That's your rules,
just take it off. And look at you. You also used to have really trendy pants too and shorts, didn't you? Geez, you were trendy in those days.
I think that was the Subi jeans era, where that Australian brand Subi, and it was all about how weird the jeans could be, I think. Yeah.
I think that's right. And there's you with Kieran Hayden.
Great guy.
Isn't he
Mark
just
Schwarzer,
a lovely?
we used to call him.
What'd you call him?
Young Mark Schwarzer.
Yeah,
could see it. Used to look like him.
Yeah, he's a lovely fellow. I want to get Kieran on the show at some point. And then, of course, your great mate, Dane.
Look at him. What? Well, I can't even imagine where that would be.
I'm pretty sure that one's Auckland.
Right, okay. Jersey's up on the wall and that, yeah. Dane used to love a trip to New Zealand, did Dane? We had a favourite little Thai restaurant, Monsoon Poon.
Yeah, the Monsoon Poon. How good was it? I'm pretty sure I gave you that. Did I give you that recommendation? I think I did.
Mate, I can't remember.
I'm pretty sure I gave you the recommendation of the Monsoon Poon from Gourmet Traveller at the time.
Very good.
How good is the Monsoon? I'd forgotten about the Monsoon Poon. There, of course, he is the great man, Glenn Wheeler, who used to hang out with us as well. That's the only photo I could find of him hanging out with us.
There's a common theme with Dane in these pictures.
Dane.
I don't know. He just loves the licking side of the face.
One expression.
There's a lot of licking. Then there's you with Anique, which is Chris Kelly's wife, of course.
Yeah.
Who's also
Those
regular on the
beanies were an unusual one. We went for the Surf Life Savings cap style beanie.
Yeah, that's right. They were unusual, weren't they? I think you were into your time as chairman by this point.
Possibly.
I think.
I'm looking more weathered. Yeah.
Looking a little bit more weathered. There he is, the great man, Georgie Belezio, David.
That would have been probably Brisbane then, wouldn't it?
Normandy.
Yeah, it was in Brisbane.
Normandy Hotel. That was a good night after a game.
Yeah.
So, Matty, can you please tell Damian the story that comes up a lot?
I was living in Brisbane at the time. Was that 2011? We'd lost by a lot, 40-something plus up in Brisbane. And we were at the Normandy afterwards. And Damian, Boldo and I refer to it regularly. Wade Graham had just been given a bath by Darren Lockyer at 5'8". And he was saying we'd reap the rewards in the years to come of what Wade would have learned from Darren that night. And even though he didn't become a career 5'8", I'd definitely take my hat off to it. He was one of the best second rowers getting around. And if Gallen wasn't lock, I reckon he would have done well there too. But it's been whenever a player seems to have a shocker, Boldo or I will trot that out and yeah.
Excellent. And every time Wade Graham had a good game, we said, it must have been that night that Damian Irvine saw him play in Brisbane where he came good.
It's funny, it's one that I was quite involved in that recruitment. We got him, if he wasn't getting a look in at the Panthers, he might have been behind with like a Jared Semmett or someone, I can't remember.
Yeah. That was his first season with us. Yeah.
Right, and he played halfback at the Panthers. We went and watched him live. And
they beat us by 50 odd. I think it was the year before.
Yeah.
Or maybe, yeah.
We watched him other game we weren't involved in to have a good look at him.
Right.
And he played halfback as well. And we really needed a halfback, but I think the general consensus was he's got to be a lock forward, this boy. And so he sort of made that natural transition. It was that era where the 6s and 7s would become 13s. Your Greg Birds, for an example. And that the rest is history. But he's some warrior, that boy. I think as happens, he probably lost. He's probably used as more a traditional back rower than a lock. A bit more in his career I would have liked to have seen, because I just think I always saw him as a short side Nick Graham, Gavin Miller, Tuira Nikau, short side lock is what I
all playing.
He's 100%, and the little grubber kicks and all that. But he's what a great clubman and unbelievable.
Yeah,
key signing for us, D-man. Set up a lot. Then also just the relationship of the CSSC at the time with the players. And so I remember we used to have the player presentations, and that closeness was really special.
That initiative was what it was all about. I think what the club got together, raised money, the CSSC, and produced these frames and used to present them for the player once they'd had their debut game. Is that right? Is that what I'm seeing there? And I think that was cool, mate. That was before its time, and that was just keeping a lid on, the reality of it and the privilege, I guess it was, wasn't it, of pulling on the shirt.
And amazing that Jimmy is able to hold that.
But I'd tell you, how many of those players would have them on their walls somewhere?
A lot. That was a very special time indeed. And then there's you with the great Bill McFarlane, one of the lovely all-time Sharks fans. Yeah. Saw her at the game at the Panthers game.
Really?
That's brilliant.
She still gets to the matches. There he is. Now, do you remember what this move was called, Damo? It was the Canberra guys came up with. It's called the beak, and we all hated it. We thought it was a terrible idea. The damn beak.
The Ravers from Queensland. Brilliant, mate. The Nate.
Dutchie.
It's just Nathan Eichenhout and those legends. And there you are with the lovely Hayley Turnbull as well. Another of Bell's mates.
Belinda's, and that's right.
Friend of Belinda's. Yeah. She's been supporting the Sharks for a long time. Saw her recently. And then there he is, the great Mick Roach.
The Premier of Queensland, eh?
Exactly. What a hero and legend. And I think that's and then there's the final. That was the 2000. That was the later trip.
Oh, back in the same place in Townsville.
Back in the same place with a different group. Yeah.
Amazing.
Amazing. And there we go. Photo files in. Notable photos with the D-man. And then that one's also quite a good one to end up on. So that was
that's brilliant. Great times.
I'll send that over. Now, do you have a photo on a thing of me you want to show to embarrass me, Damo, or is that just a all
It's
talk?
not, mate. I don't think it's embarrassing at all. I think it's about, because I didn't realise you're such a football man, and so it's more around your athletic ability as a footballer.
Oh, there it is.
Is that the Seagulls?
That's playing for the Seagulls in the.
You're a centre back from memory. Is that right?
I think I played. I did play a bit of centre back. Yes, I think in that match I was right midfield for Dane Wheeler's and James Wheelan's team.
So what was really cool about that? There was Kieran and Christian. I think you all played.
Yeah, there was basically a whole team of the CSSC had a Seagulls team.
And I remember one game clashed with the Sharks away game. And so the bus had to leave the bowling club. We all came by there during the second half while you're wrapping up. And the bus sang all these songs. You go through there on the way into this little car park, this suburban little recreational ground. And then you all just sort of came straight off the pitch onto the bus to get to Penrith away or wherever it was. Could you remember that?
Yeah, I remember that. He's a very good player, Kieran Hayden. He used to get a lot of goals. Yeah, he was a really handy player. I was going to ask you that, D-man, of the Sharks players. Who do you think? Well, we'll do that as the wrap-up question. Of the Sharks players all time, who would have made the best English soccer player or footballer, you think?
Mate, David Peachey.
Peachey would have been good, but he was a good basketballer, wasn't he?
I'd have stuck him up top, Crouch-esque, drop it on the chest, good on the feet, or maybe a wing back up and down the, yeah.
Something like that, yeah. Something like that.
So you know what? It's funny. We talked a lot over here about developing players, and I don't think many rugby league can make the transition into football, but there's a big program at the moment for AFL players coming into football as goalkeepers because their skill set to command the 6-yard box, what's all anything.
Ruckman and the like.
Mate, unbelievable. And as we've seen a lot of them go into NFL as kickers and that, I think you'll see the next 10, 15 years so-so AFL players that didn't quite make it in the AFL merging into rugby league goalkeepers. We had a boy here for 2 seasons, Jordan Holmes, a Shire boy or from around there, who was a baseball catcher, and he only went into goalkeeping at maybe 15 or 16. Played for the Olyroos and he was a keeper at our club here, and that's another story. There are thousands of lower league footballers over here that are at quite a good level. So
I'm sure they are. Well, D-man, thank you for coming on the ET Stand podcast. 2 hours is a long time for this one. So, mate, do appreciate it. It is amazing going down that memory lane. And so all those memories that, you and I have together, but also we have with a whole bunch of Sharks fans, from that era and also now, it is a gift that just keeps giving, and that's one of the reasons.
The smiles on your faces and mine as we're talking about it in those pictures says it all, doesn't it, mate? And it's been brilliant having a chat about it.
Perfect.
Thank you for your time. One more final question. Thanks, mate. I don't think you can possibly oversell, take this how you will, between this, your chat with Sam, all the other, I suppose, everything we've heard through the time, that it's almost becoming folklore-esque. I don't think you can possibly oversell your impact on the club. So I just want to say thank you on behalf of everybody. I've got 2 young boys now. They get the opportunity to go down to Shark Park each week and join the fun, which, they're one of them especially is just like you said, as a 3-year-old, just dressed and loving every bit of it, and Nico's his idol and the like. So thank you for that. We can't possibly overstate that. And also too, the flip side being that the CLBC segue we had there, that sense of community we've had throughout the entire thing, and whether this all would have happened or not, if that wasn't there, who knows? But yeah, we're forever in debt to everyone who started that as well. So thanks, mate.
I really appreciate it. And I just want to say as well, I think the club at the moment is going superbly, and I think Dino and what the guys are doing there is phenomenal. And it was probably 4 or so years ago, he invited me back. I couldn't make it. It was mid-season over here. They've been very, very good at making me feel very welcome at the club, and super. And I won't bore you with it, but I don't know if you can see this. I'm going to have to turn this around because this is not, and I just didn't put this up today, by the way. This is there all the time. He did send me this. Can you see that?
Oh, wow.
Oh, how good.
Yeah, he sent me over that a few years ago, and it hangs in there. So every player, every away manager that comes in for beer and all that, they always see the Sharks shirt, and we have a chat about it and that. So it's always here, part of it.
I love it. We'll just wrap it up with some lovely comments that have come through. Anthony Jakovic says, Irvine, you did a great job. I'm sure you can bring some added experience to the club again. Probably true.
Well, let me tell you, I'll touch on that. It's not lost. Dino's got my number. He messages every now and then, and he's brilliant. They may be coming over to do some research later this month, and I helped him out getting to some football clubs to learn about performance and that. Look, I'm there all the time for the club at any time, but hey, they don't really need it. They're going so well.
And then the great Scott Latino says, great insights. Yeah, gents. Yeah, the D-man. No comment about the Raiders match. And then one of the regular contributors, Williams 2.0, in reference to always good to see the tree get the win. Not sure what he might be referencing there. We'll just let that one.
That's on our mate.
We just let that one go through to the keeper. But yes, D-man, thank you for your time with the Sharks and also the friendship before that, and being so generous with your time. You're obviously, high-level executive in the English football leagues over there. What is it? Ebbsfield? How do I say it exactly, D-man?
Ebbsfleet.
Yeah, I'm just up at the tall poppy syndrome with Nottingham Forest, man. I don't look below 6th in the table.
Enjoy that. Long may that last, by the way.
Massive mock there. They're getting relegated now. But
exactly, indeed. But D-man, thank you for all that. We'll say thank you. We'll be back next Tuesday with another episode of the ET Stand. I think it's going to be Franco and me comparing all of the halfbacks and seeing where we think Nico Hines sits. But yes, there it is, Scott Latino. That was all Boldo with the beer throwing saga, throwing me under the bus there. For me, I'm David Bolderman. For my co-host, Matthew Williams, and the great Damian Irvine, former Sharks Chairman, we say thank you and we bid you farewell. Up, Cronulla.
For over 50 years, people have come to see the Sharks play. Talent, skill, speed, intelligence, elite-level athleticism. That's not these guys. Biased, one-eyed, opinionated, more often wrong than right. They make up for their complete lack of talent with pure dribble, gibberish, and enthusiasm. This is the ET Stand Podcast.